Okay, now that we've met one another, let me tell you some more about, well, not about me, but let's get to know each other a little better. The primary thing about me is that I have Asperger's syndrome. I did not realize this until I read Cynthia Kim's excellent book, I Think I Might Be Autistic, just a couple of years ago. Like me, Ms. Kim was not recognized as autistic in childhood and so did not receive any interventions or any special therapy. And so as I read her book, it was like reading my autobiography. Everything she described in there was just like a mirror of myself. And the checklist that she had prepared in consultation with psychologists and psychiatrists specializing in autism, as I went through them, do you? Yes. Do you? Yes. Just, it all fit. And so I finally had a sense of relief after a lifetime of wondering what was wrong with me. Because I do have Asperger's, I had all the negative experiences that you can imagine that went with it. I was very physically clumsy. To this day, I'm still somewhat clumsy, but as a kid, especially physically clumsy. So I hated PE, physical education class. I dreaded that because I was always the proverbial last kid picked for the team and then stuck out in right field. Nobody wanted to play with me because I was not good at playing sports. Social isolation, I can remember, honestly, only having one girl friend. When I think back to my childhood, it's mostly memories of being alone, of playing alone. For instance, in recess, I can remember sitting on top of the monkey bars while the other kids played dodgeball down below on the playground, or later in another grade went off to the sporting field just beyond the playground to play a sport. During recess, they didn't even bother to pick me. So I just sat there by myself up on top of the jungle gym and watched everybody else running around playing together. So very much the awkwardness, the social isolation. My 16th birthday, I had invited a handful of girls for a kind of girls' night out to go see a really popular movie at that time, and nobody showed up. Not a single one of them showed up, and only one girl ever bothered to give me an excuse later. So I could go on and on. When I was a junior in high school and we had moved to a big city in a large high school, I experienced active bullying. There was a boy in one of my classes who started taunting me, started calling me bad names, and then he roped in his friends outside of class, and so they would follow me around the hallways, just calling me vulgar, sexual names, harassing me. And unfortunately, we had the same lunch, so they started doing the same thing in the cafeteria. And it got to the point where I just stopped eating lunch. I would go hide out in the library instead to get away from them. Mercifully, at the end of my junior year, we moved yet again to another city and another school, and things improved there. But yes, I can honestly say, when I look back, that I have no desire to return to childhood, to go back to my school days, because it was not... Those years were not good for me. So, because we went to church, there was a spiritual aspect of it as well. I believed that somehow God must have screwed up. It wasn't just a matter of wanting to play with the boys. I actually thought like a boy. I preferred hanging around with certain boys, what we now call the geeks, the Star Wars geeks, before that term was even coined. That was us. Remember the game of Trap? We threw out the game. We just built the mousetrap. Those kinds of boys. I loved hanging out with them because I thought like them. I played with the same kinds of toys that they did. I wanted to be one of them. And so since I was a girl, I couldn't understand why I had these conflicting feelings going on, a boy trapped in a girl's body. And I used to imagine that there were two lines of souls up in heaven, a masculine and a feminine, and that one by one they would drop down into the chute into a body once some baby was conceived or born. So I used to think that somehow my soul was supposed to have been masculine, a boy, and then it just got confused, whatever, and stood in the wrong line and got dropped into a girl's body. I didn't know how else to explain it. And within the church walls, the rigid gender segregation just did not help. I was raised in a very conservative denomination, so the men held all the leadership roles, and the women, at least the way I perceived it, just went to cook back in the kitchen for the potlucks or teach the children's Sunday schools. And it that just wasn't me. That didn't fit me. I didn't want to be in the back of the church teaching kids like myself, or Lord help me, in the kitchen slaving away over pots, talking all the time. I wanted to be up in the front of the church. My dad was actually the minister, so I wanted to be up there like Dad, because I wanted to immerse myself in God's word. I loved hearing my dad preach because I loved how he knew so much about the Bible. And I just dreamed of being able to grow up and go to seminary so I could just go to school to learn all about the Bible, especially the languages. Oh, I wanted to learn Hebrew and Greek. So that was my dream, but I internalized it that it was not a dream for me because I was a girl. And so even within church, there was no comfort there. It was not until I became an adult that things turned around, and primarily because I met my wonderful, wonderful husband, Andrew. He accepted me as a human being. It did not bother him in the slightest that I loved sports. In fact, he told me later, we met through an internet dating service, he told me later that was one of the things that he loved about me. Finally, a woman who liked sports. So we just got right along. He's a geek too. He fixes computers for a living. So, I mean, we're just so compatible. And he accepted me for who I am, a woman who has some masculine tendencies. The second thing that really helped me, he's British. I mentioned earlier that I love to watch those PBS costume dramas. Oh, so I got to go live in England with Andrew. It was wonderful. But while we were there, Andrew belonged to the United Methodist denomination. And more than that, he was trained as a local preacher, which is a lay preacher. And in England, because they have so few ordained ministers, it's the local preachers who do most of the services. So I traveled around our district with Andrew, watching him conduct services. And one day I confessed to him about my old childhood dream. And he told me, well, why not join me? Half of the local preachers in our district are women. Just put in your application. So next to my wedding day, the second happiest time of my life was the night Andrew returned from our district's local preachers meeting and told me, you made it. My application had been voted upon and accepted. Oh, so I entered the training program with my friend Elisa that I mentioned earlier. The hard road of having to communicate God's word in a different culture, in a different way. It was not an easy process, but I did it. Traveled around with Andrew for the next 3 years. We supported each other as we went around and conducted services. And so that really freed me up spiritually. So that is how I am able to be here today to maybe try and help you continue on a healing journey and find some sort of spiritual healing.